I mean, that's tough to follow up with. But I mean, the thing that stands out with me is just the storytelling. I mean, it's just a powerful story, and you even mentioned the story. The storytelling aspect is really just such an important part. It's an art. Yeah,
Mm.
how did you learn the to develop and master the storytelling aspect of what you do? I mean, it's critical, especially from a business owner and from your profession.
I think for me it was is getting past on my business mind stuff and seeing the human. Like when I ask about your first date, for example, I want to know what you were feeling. I want to know the moment that you first laid eyes on each other, what was happening inside of your mind. I mean, part of my training is psychotherapy. I'm a pastoral psychotherapist in my chaplain world, and so I'm able to watch facial expressions and to I might see a little twitch. I'm like, tell me about that twitch. Or, you know, all the wholeness of that. It helps me to evaluate, assess, and then to dig a little bit deeper. Um, I like talking about the first kiss, like what happened. How did you respond? Well, you know, in the engagement story, it's not just how the person got on their knee and said the words, "Will you marry me?" It's what was happening in the person's mind as they were building up to those moments, why those feelings were happening, and then what did you experience the expression of the person you were asking that to, and how did they react? And then I asked the person what was going on in their head, and so it's just this constant dance and and getting every single bit of the details so that I mean I get a lot of details, so I only tell like that much of it, but I get the best part of that much, so I can say the most explosive sentence with the most detail, with the most that it emotes so much feeling for the couple and for the guest experiencing that. Um, all of that, I think. But I have to give props to my psychotherapy training. It's just I highly recommend being a storyteller and a psychotherapist because you can do a lot with that.
Yeah, well, I mean, with like all the different reality television shows that we see, I mean, all of it is about the backstory. I mean, and you can't even get cast for shows like that unless you have a really compelling backstory that they can leverage and continue to build upon that. Is I mean, it's just so the storytelling aspect is really incredible. And also, I mean, as a founder of a business, I mean, it's just your story is very unique, and you need to gain the confidence and own that story and use it to your not advantage, but I mean that's what's building your business.
Yeah, yeah. I think storytelling is just important in all aspects of life, and I think even I mean with my pest control company, for example, I think storytelling is important in there too. It's not just business as usual. There's human beings interacting with other human beings and how to make those interactions the best interactions possible. And then the follow up thereafter. Like, did you have a good experience with me? And if not, what could I do better? Or if so, what did I do good? You know, all of that is important. And I think often in business we miss the human component of things, and it it just I think we swing and miss a lot too much.
If you go to a restaurant and the manager comes by and says, "Hey, how was your meal?" I think the majority of people, whether their meal was great or not, say it was good. Right. The same thing is kind of what you were just saying, where after you work with clients in either of the businesses, you ask them that question. Most of them, it seems like, don't provide enough detail into an answer that you can really do something with. Either they ignore it or they just click a number and there's no real context behind it. Is there anything that you've done to get a deeper answer to something like for that, so that you can really understand it? Because I would hope that the person at the restaurant that you just told that the meal was fine, when the burger was overcooked, the fries were terrible, the server, whatever, you know, if that happens in your business, you want to know about that, right? But if the person who's the customer doesn't tell that answer, you can't do anything with it. So is there anything that you've done to remedy that problem?
I don't know if I something that I've done. I don't do anything specific to that point, but I do when I ask the question about my care service or whatever. I tell them that my human part of it is that you know the biggest compliment and tip that you can give me is the opportunity to say something back about my work, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. That's important to me. So I'm often surprised to see how someone has experienced it when I put the shade of, or the lens of humanity of how that's going to impact me, and what they say thereafter. So I just kind of let it go to the wilds and see. I have two really, really, really incredibly bad reviews that were very humbling to me, but I wear them as a badge of honor with my gazillions of other positive reviews. But it's something that I can take home and evaluate and process.
Yeah, well, I bet when you wore plaid to a wedding that you weren't supposed to, that was probably the one that reviewed you terribly. So,
Oh, it wasn't. But they didn't comment about my clothing. I'm sure if I gave them the opportunity, they might.
so something that Gary Plagg, who knows if I pronounce his last name correct, Plague, you may know him. You probably do know him, right?
Mm-hmm.
He explained this to me. He said, when you want feedback, offer, or you're going to provide feedback to someone, make sure you're in the right mindset, right? Make sure that you are accepting of that information. Or if you're going to provide someone feedback, say something like, do you want feedback? And that's an open door to get it, to get that information from you. Is that something that, and I say that because you're asking for that information, right? And those 2 bad reviews were humbling and stuff like that. But is it something that you had to work with yourself personally to figure out, like, yo, like, this is not, I don't know why I've said yo a lot today too. I feel like I don't normally speak like that, but whatever. Is that something that you had to work on yourself, or you're fine with it? Like, how do you take the feedback, positive and negative?
Well, I think initially when I got those 2 bad ones, I mean, I wanted to call my lawyer and do a cease and desist or sue them. But
Wow.
right around that time, I'm very honest. But right around that time, I met with a couple and they said, we thought your reviews were staged or fake until we saw those 2 bad reviews, and now they're just real and we think you're real. So we hired you because you had 2 bad reviews. I mean, it just changed my perspective, because it's like, people have bad days sometimes, and we can either deny the badness or reject it, or we can accept it. And when we accept it, I think it's coming to a place of understanding the perception of the person that's writing or feeling those things, because their perception is still real whether I agree with it or not. And so that, I think that's the most important part. If someone feels a certain way about a certain thing, it's important to that person, and I have to hear it, acknowledge it. I don't have to agree with it, but at least I can hear it and acknowledge it. And there might be some truth a part of it, and I can follow through and see what I needed to learn from that. So,
are you a networker? I mean, you know a lot of people. You've officiated, 10,000 weddings, 6,000. I'm listening, I promise. Do you find yourself as a good networker? Do you it seems like you've positioned yourself well in that case, but I mean, do you still get out there? And I mean, I know you and Tim are in the same Rotary together. I think I heard that. Like, are you a networker?
So I used to say I was a master networker back in the day. So I was at everything. I'd pass out my card to everything. My goal, I'd work the room, if you will. I would have their card, they would have my card. I think older in life, I've done a little bit less than that, because as much as I work, I still hear and feel the introvert part of me that just screams inside. So I went to a networking event that's just launching. What was it, last on Tuesday? It's Darling and Friends. Darling is a hair beauty person, and she's starting her own kind of like BNI thing. And I'm not a fan of BNI per se. But I came in, I sat, and I talked to everybody. And then at the end, everyone's networking, but I just kind of sit in my chair. People come up to me, and we just listened, and I talked. So networking is important. I think if I was to tell a young entrepreneur where to start, I think it's writing your dream down, sharing it to everybody that you possibly can, and then talking about. But then there's a part in life where you've arrived and you're tired and you don't want any more business. You just want to sit down and just chill and drink
Okay,
some
so
wine.
this is interesting. Okay, so
Yeah.
you just said that you story tell for other people, it's not about you. But then from a networking perspective, it was the complete opposite. It was give my business card to everyone, tell people my goals, et cetera, et cetera. What's the difference in that swing?
Well, there's not much different. It's my story still when I'm networking.
But it's your story, not the other people's story, so it doesn't matter. Like so when you're officiating a wedding, it's not about you. You said it's
Yeah.
about the people that you're
Yeah.
bringing together. So when you're networking, though, it sounds like it's the flip flop of that. When you're trying to get your story out there, where before it wasn't about you, it's now about you.
Yeah. I don't know. I think the human components of my own story is important in that sense, and I think it's when you're talking about your business, it's not just why should I hire you, but why should I like you enough to give you my money? You know what I mean? And I think the why of liking you is important. And so if I share my story, it gives you that why and like, and that's why people hire me. Some people have no idea the type of service or work or storytelling that I do, but they like me as a human. So they're like, here's my $500. Can you be a part of my most special day of my life?
You just Venmo me. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a wedding. Just straight up, just give me $500.
Yeah.
You can guess what my Venmo is and send me the money.
That sounds good.
I've been directly involved within the startup community for almost a decade. I want to talk to you about a serious pain point. Spending a ton of time trying to understand the business landscape in the 757. That's time that should be focused on growing the business. At StartWheel, we're here to help you by compiling all of the news you need to know about in one place. Now there's no need to search multiple websites. Just head to startwheel.org and see for yourself. That's startwheel.org.